Space has always obeyed a rhythm we thought we understood. Comets glow in soft cyan or green, the delicate light of diatomic carbon energized by the sun. Asteroids wander in dull shades of gray, like forgotten relics drifting endlessly in silence. Stars themselves pulse in predictable fires, their colors telling us stories of their temperatures and ages. For centuries, humanity has trusted this cosmic order as if the universe itself were a grand symphony following the same sheet of music. But then came the night when that music faltered. An interstellar traveler, catalogued as 3I Atlas, which had promised to be nothing more than a fascinating scientific opportunity, suddenly turned into something else entirely. Through the eyes of our most advanced observatories, including Hubble, Kepler, Spitzer, and above all, the James Webb Space Telescope, astronomers watched in disbelief as the object's glowing coma began to shift, abandoning the familiar cyan hues of a comet and transforming into a deep, pulsating crimson red, a color that doesn't belong in the cold theater of space. To the untrained eye, it might look like just another strange astronomical phenomenon, but to scientists, that red was a siren. It was too pure, too uniform, too deliberate. It wasn't reflection, it was emission. 3I Atlas wasn't shining with the sun's borrowed light, it was shining with its own. And in that moment, a comet became something else. A natural body became an artificial puzzle, and a discovery became an activation. When 3I Atlas was first spotted, it seemed like the kind of cosmic visitor that fuels astronomers' dreams. Traveling at more than 100,000 miles per hour, it appeared as a faint smudge in the void, gradually brightening as it made its way toward the inner solar system. The scientific community was ecstatic. This was only the third interstellar object ever observed after Oumuamua and Borisov. A rare opportunity to study a fragment from another star system, to peer into the chemistry and structure of alien material that had traveled for perhaps millions of years across unimaginable distances. For months, it behaved like a model comet, and excitement only grew. But then, without warning, the data began to shift. Spitzer, operating in infrared, registered a massive spike in heat from the object's nucleus, far greater than anything that could be explained by normal outgassing. That alone was puzzling, but not unprecedented. But within minutes, Webb's instruments painted a far stranger picture. The familiar coma of faint green light vanished, replaced by a crimson glow so intense and rhythmic that it appeared to throb like a living thing. Astronomers scrambled, redirecting Hubble and even the retired Kepler telescope to verify. The results were identical. The color change was real, and the light was not steady. It pulsed with perfect regularity, a heartbeat echoing through the darkness once every 84.6 seconds. A comet is supposed to be a dirty snowball shedding ice and dust, but this looked like a machine disguising itself as a comet until it was ready to switch on. Humanity thought it was watching a natural fragment of rock and ice, but now it looked as though the universe had been using camouflage and the disguise had just been dropped. When light pulses with rhythm, science knows to take notice. Nature is chaotic, unpredictable, messy, but rhythm belongs to intelligence. And so, the heartbeat of 3I Atlas immediately caught the attention not just of astronomers, but of cryptographers and code breakers, the kind of minds usually tasked with intercepting human communications, now turned toward decoding a beacon in the sky. The National Security Agency was pulled into the investigation, its analysts studying the red light as if it were an encrypted transmission. What they found only deepened the mystery. Within each heartbeat of crimson were trillions of smaller fluctuations, microscopic ripples of brightness so fast and so precise that they resembled data packets. It was as though an entire library of information had been compressed into a single pulse, waiting for the right kind of receiver to notice. Imagine opening a book and realizing each letter hides another book inside it. That was the scale of what they were facing. But decoding it proved impossible. The message wasn't written in mathematics or binary, but in a kind of physics we barely understood. And while the world's best cryptographers struggled to make sense of the impossible, radar returns added another layer of terror. Sometimes 3I Atlas behaved like a stealth craft, vanishing entirely from radar scans as though it were designed to absorb them, At other times, it reflected them with blinding intensity, creating readings more powerful than anything a natural object could produce. And then came the thermal profile. While its outer shell glowed with hostile crimson energy, its core sat frozen at just 3 degrees above absolute zero, a temperature so close to perfect cold that it defied the very laws of thermodynamics. It was as if someone had lit a bonfire that was frozen solid at the center, a paradox of physics staring back at us from millions of miles away. For a time, Project Icarus, the secret task force assembled to monitor the object, could only watch, waiting for the next impossible detail to surface. And eventually, it did. As 3I Atlas passed near Mars, its path should have shifted ever so slightly, bent by the planet's gravity. This is not speculation. It is the most predictable law in the universe. Every mass bends space-time. Every passing object feels its pull. But 3I Atlas did not flinch. It sailed through the orbit of Mars as though the planet were an illusion. For scientists who had spent their lives trusting Einstein's equations, this was nothing short of heresy. Gravity is universal, except it seemed for this object. The conclusion was inescapable. It wasn't a rock. It wasn't a comet. It was under intelligent control, equipped with a drive or mechanism that allowed it to resist planetary gravity itself. Our rockets still rely on brute force explosions to escape Earth's pull. By comparison, 3I Atlas was like a ghost, walking through walls we cannot even touch. And in that moment, the mood within Project Icarus shifted from tense observation to silent dread. Because an object that can defy gravity is an object that can go anywhere, do anything, without resistance. It was no longer just about what it was. The question was now what it could do, and whether we would be powerless to stop it. As the data piled up, the question changed again. Not what is it, not how does it work, but why? Why is this thing here, shining with hostile crimson light, pulsing like a colossal beacon? Inside classified meetings, 3 theories began to dominate. The first, called the lighthouse theory, suggested that 3I Atlas isn't here for us at all. It's an ancient beacon, switched on to warn of something else. Perhaps a dangerous region of the galaxy we're drifting into, or an unseen threat approaching from the void. The red light in this scenario is not directed at Earth, but at the cosmos itself, a galactic danger sign blinking into the dark. The second, darker theory became known as the Harbinger. It suggested that the crimson pulse marked the beginning of the object's true function, the release of microscopic, self-replicating machines, nanoscopic seeds designed to terraform planets, rewrite atmospheres, or alter biology, preparing a world for future colonization. The red wasn't just light. It was the color of our world beginning to change. And then there was the most unsettling theory of all, the litmus test. According to this, everything we've witnessed, the disguise, the color change, the signal, is not the main event, but the experiment. A psychological probe crafted to test our reaction, to see whether humanity panics, whether it prepares for war, whether it tries to communicate, or whether it simply watches in fear. In this interpretation, the object isn't here to destroy or colonize. It's here to measure us, to evaluate us like lab rats confronted with something outside comprehension. And the most disturbing part? If that's true, then someone, or something, is watching right now, studying our every move, taking notes on how we handle the impossible. The more scientists dissected the crimson heartbeat, the stranger it became. At first, the 84.6-second rhythm seemed like a simple on-off signal, the kind of pattern you might expect from a beacon. But buried within each pulse were microscopic oscillations so rapid and intricate that they resembled layers of compressed data. Imagine listening to a single musical note, only to discover that hidden inside are symphonies, voices, and entire archives woven into the vibrations themselves. That is what analysts at the NSA and private cryptography labs confronted. Every fluctuation carried structure, as if the light itself had been engineered to carry information across the void. Yet when they tried to decode it, the language collapsed into something unrecognizable, a physics-based script beyond our alphabet, beyond binary, beyond mathematics as we know it. Some compared it to staring at an alien operating system. We can see the code is there, we can see it runs on logic, but we have no key to unlock it. The realization was chilling. This wasn't noise. It wasn't even necessarily a message. It was a transmission waiting for the right mind, or the right machine, to understand it. And perhaps, just perhaps, that mind isn't human. While the public still believed 3I Atlas to be nothing more than a comet, a classified task force codenamed Project Icarus was working around the clock to monitor every flicker, every shift in trajectory, every anomaly the object produced. For the scientists and military officers inside the project, the discovery no longer belonged to the realm of astronomy. This was a defense issue, a national security crisis with implications far beyond our technological grasp. Icarus used the combined might of Earth's largest radio dishes, orbital sensors, and classified satellites to build a profile of the visitor. What they found deepened their unease. The object's shape, a jagged shard more than 2 miles long, wasn't constant. Radar scans suggested its geometry changed, sometimes appearing sharp, sometimes blurred, as if its surface could alter the way it interacted with energy. Even stranger, its radar profile mirrored that of advanced stealth craft, invisible one moment, blindingly reflective the next. To the veterans of the U.S. Space Force, this was the behavior of a craft not hiding by accident, but choosing when to be seen. And in warfare, that's the most unnerving move of all. The final proof that 3I Atlas was under intelligent control came not from light, not from radio, but from gravity itself. When it drifted past Mars, its path should have curved, even slightly, under the pull of the planet's mass. Astronomers calculated the expected deviation to the meter, but the deviation never came. It was as though Mars didn't exist. A 2-mile structure moving at impossible speed simply ignored the tug of an entire world. That kind of defiance can't be achieved by rock or ice. It can only be achieved by a mechanism, a drive that neutralizes the most universal force in nature. In that instant, the illusion of a comet dissolved. Humanity wasn't watching a drifting relic. It was watching a ship, a probe, or something even stranger, a construct moving through our system by choice, not by chance. To those inside Project Icarus, the revelation was staggering. Rockets are still our proudest achievements, but compared to this, they're toys, spears hurled by cavemen, while this object walks effortlessly through walls. It wasn't just the breaking of physics. It was a demonstration of superiority, a message written not in words, but in defiance of gravity itself. With proof mounting that 3I Atlas was no natural wanderer, the debate turned to purpose. Why here? Why now? Why in this way? 3 terrifying theories rose to prominence. The lighthouse theory imagined the crimson glow as a warning beacon, activated not for us, but for the galaxy itself, a signal that our system has entered a hazardous corridor of space, or that another, greater threat approaches unseen. The harbinger theory took a darker tone, suggesting that the color shift marked the beginning of a process, that the object was a machine seeding the void with invisible nanoscopic agents, designed to alter atmospheres, oceans, or biology, slowly preparing planets like Earth for colonization. And then came the most unsettling of all, the litmus test theory. According to this, everything we had observed, the disguise as a comet, the sudden transformation, the rhythmic pulse, was crafted not as communication, but as a test. A way of measuring us, of watching how humanity responds when confronted with something it cannot comprehend. Do we lash out with fear? Do we attempt diplomacy? Do we break down under the weight of our own paranoia? If this was a test, then someone, somewhere, was watching, and the experiment was already underway. And the chilling thought remained. Maybe we weren't supposed to pass. Maybe we were only supposed to be observed. As the heartbeat of 3I Atlas continued to pulse across the void, some researchers began to wonder if the object wasn't transmitting information outward at all, but inward. A team of independent cryptographers proposed a radical idea. What if the signal wasn't a broadcast, but a mirror? They discovered that the timing of the pulses sometimes seemed to change subtly depending on the instruments used to record them, as if the object were sampling the observers themselves. Imagine holding up a mirror that not only reflects your face, but rearranges its reflection depending on who is looking into it. That is what the crimson pulse seemed to do. This meant that the light wasn't just a message. It was an interaction, a feedback loop between human technology and the alien design embedded within the object. In hushed circles, whispers grew louder. 3i Atlas might not be speaking to us. It might be studying us, mapping our methods, our sensors, our curiosity, and most disturbingly, our ability to comprehend what we're seeing. While scientists debated whether the crimson light was a message or a mirror, the military had no such luxury of speculation. To them, the presence of a 2-mile-long object immune to gravity and broadcasting impossible signals wasn't an academic puzzle. It was a potential threat, and threats are never left unmonitored. Inside the Pentagon, Project Icarus expanded rapidly. New divisions were created, bringing together intelligence officers, astrophysicists, and even psychologists to model the impact of disclosure. High-resolution satellites were silently repositioned to track the visitor, while ground-based radar arrays were ordered to operate around the clock. The most telling sign of military concern wasn't the classified memos or the encrypted transmissions between agencies. It was the silence. Public briefings from NASA became vague, updates were quietly redacted, and data that had once been freely available to independent astronomers suddenly vanished behind digital firewalls. It was as though the world's most powerful institutions had agreed on one thing. Whatever 3i Atlas was, humanity wasn't ready to face it openly. And yet, secrecy only added fuel to speculation, because in the vacuum of silence, fear thrives. If the crimson light was unsettling, what happened next was far worse. As 3i Atlas drifted deeper into the solar system, its trajectory was recalculated thousands of times a day, with predictions matched against reality. And then, one by one, those predictions began to fail. The object refused to obey the gravitational curves that every celestial body should follow. It ignored Mars. It skimmed past the sun with almost no measurable deflection, and in one observation so controversial that it was initially suppressed, it appeared to adjust its velocity mid-flight, as though course-correcting against the pull of Jupiter. For a natural object, such precision is impossible. But for a vessel, or a probe, guided by an unknown intelligence, it makes perfect sense. The discovery tore a hole in our scientific confidence. Gravity isn't just a law, it's the framework of reality. To see it disregarded was to witness the universe itself being rewritten before our eyes. And if this thing could rewrite the rules of nature, what else could it do? Theories multiplied as fast as the fear. Some insisted 3i Atlas was a warning system, designed to flare to crimson only when the galaxy faced imminent danger. Others claimed it was a seeder, a machine carrying the genetic seeds of life across star systems, activated now because our world was finally within its reach. But the most disturbing possibility was the simplest, that this was a test. A mask pulled away, a pulse broadcast into the void, not for communication, but for observation. Every telescope pointed at it, every line of code written to analyze its signal, every press conference held or silenced. All of it became part of the experiment. Humanity wasn't watching an object. Humanity was the object, the variable in someone else's equation. If the crimson glow was a question, then our response, our panic, our theories, our silence, might already be the answer. And that answer may determine what happens next. Astronomers are used to coincidences in space, but coincidences rarely come in patterns. As the weeks passed, researchers began noticing that 3i Atlas's crimson pulses often peaked during very specific alignments, moments when Earth, Mars, and the Sun lined up in unusual orbital configurations. At first, it seemed like mere chance, but when statisticians ran the numbers, the odds of these timings occurring randomly collapsed into impossibility. It was as if the object knew where the planets would be, as if it had anticipated our system's clockwork and was responding to it. Some even argued that 3i Atlas wasn't just aligning with planets, it was syncing itself with us. The timing of its pulses began to resemble the patterns of ancient astronomical cycles recorded in megalithic sites like Stonehenge and Teotihuacan, structures humans built thousands of years ago to mark cosmic rhythms. Could this mean the visitor wasn't new at all? That it had been here before, watching, waiting, and now choosing the moment to reveal itself? The thought sent chills through the scientific community. Because if this was true, the crimson glow was not a reaction. It was a ritual. Project Icarus had access to some of the most advanced radar and imaging systems on Earth, and when they stitched together the data, a disturbing truth emerged. 3I Atlas's shape wasn't stable. At times, the object appeared as a jagged shard of glass, but at others, its outline shifted into sharp geometric forms that no natural body should ever possess. Triangular reflections appeared, vanishing in seconds, followed by symmetrical ridges that looked engineered rather than accidental. Some frames even suggested a lattice-like structure running through its interior, as though it were hollow or built. For scientists, this was the moment when denial became impossible. Rocks do not change shape. Ice does not arrange itself into geometry. Only machines do that. And yet, to call it a machine felt inadequate, because its geometry didn't just defy geology, it seemed to adapt depending on who was looking. Different sensors produced different forms, as though the object wasn't simply being observed, but was presenting different faces to each set of eyes. This wasn't just technology. It was camouflage of the most advanced kind, a living riddle that refused to show its true form. Then came the echo. While monitoring the heartbeat of 3I Atlas, deep space radio antennas in California and Australia picked up something they couldn't explain, a return signal. But it didn't come from the object itself. Instead, it originated from the space between Earth and Mars, an empty corridor where nothing should exist. The echo was faint, but it matched the crimson pulse with eerie precision, like a mirror repeating the message from nowhere. At first, scientists assumed it was interference, but repeated checks confirmed the anomaly. It was as though something invisible was relaying the signal back toward us, bouncing it across the solar system like a test transmission. Was this a hidden companion trailing behind the main object, cloaked from our instruments? Or was space itself being used as a conduit, bent and shaped into an amplifier by technologies we can't begin to imagine? Either possibility was unsettling, because it meant we weren't just observing 3I Atlas anymore. We were inside its network, caught in a web of communication we didn't understand, a conversation where humanity wasn't the speaker, only the subject. The final discovery before silence fell may have been the most disturbing of all. Spectral analysis of the red glow revealed not just light, but modulation in frequencies that overlapped with the same electromagnetic ranges used by human brainwaves. Neuroscientists ran controlled tests, exposing volunteers to the recorded pulses, and what they found was beyond coincidence. Brain activity synchronized with the rhythm of the signal. People described strange dreams, sudden feelings of being observed, and in one case, a vivid vision of standing beneath a crimson sky while something vast loomed overhead. It was as though the object wasn't simply emitting light. It was reaching into the minds of those who studied it, planting impressions, whispering ideas that weren't entirely their own. Was this intentional? A form of communication designed to bypass language and speak directly to consciousness? Or was it something even more sinister, an intrusion into the very fabric of thought itself? Whatever the case, one thing became undeniable. The crimson glow wasn't just an external phenomenon. It was beginning to live inside us. We began by thinking we had discovered a comet, a simple fragment of rock and ice from another star system, a chance to study the universe beyond our neighborhood. But with every pulse, every impossible reading, every crimson heartbeat that echoed through the void, 3I Atlas shattered that illusion. This was never a comet. It was never a harmless visitor. It was something alive with intent, something that could defy gravity, rewrite the rules of physics, and perhaps even reach into our very thoughts. And now the truth hangs heavy in the silence left behind. If this object wanted to remain hidden, it could have done so easily. It could have slipped past our instruments undetected, vanished into the dark as quietly as it came. But instead, it revealed itself. It chose to glow, to pulse, to challenge us with a signal too complex to decode and a presence too vast to ignore. This was not an accident. It was deliberate. So the question is no longer what is 3I Atlas. The question is why us? Why now? Was it a warning, a seed, or a test? Are we witnessing the first step in an ancient galactic ritual? Or are we the experiment, Our every reaction recorded and analyzed by an intelligence far beyond our comprehension? Perhaps the crimson light wasn't just for the galaxy to see. Perhaps it was always meant for us. The James Webb Telescope caught more than just a comet turning red. It caught humanity's reflection in the void, a reminder that we are not alone, that the sky is watching, and that somewhere in the vast darkness, something is waiting for our answer. Because in the end, 3I Atlas was never just passing through. It came to be seen. And now that it has our attention, the real story may only just be beginning.